Hello there, fellow hunters. I thought I'd do a quick review of Monster Hunter Wilds as someone that's been playing pretty much since the beginning of the franchise. I started with Monster Hunter on the PS2, then played 2 and Freedom Unite on the PSP, went to Try on the Wii. If you guys remember, they did like the limited edition black version. And then I didn't play for too many generations. Like, I don't think I played Generations. And then I went to 4 Ultimate on the 3DS. They did the nice console for that. Then World came out, which was obviously quite a drastic change from what we were used to. Then I played Rise, and now we're here on Wilds. And I thought I'd just go over my experience on this game as someone who's been playing pretty much since they've had all the sort of mechanical changes and graphics changes. And I'll start with the pros. The pros of this game, first off, this gameplay, obviously, is very just comfortable to use. The mechanics to, use your weapons, to use your mount, everything like that. It's just very easy, because obviously on older games it's kind of jank. The controls are a little bit hit or miss, but it was stuff you just, acclimated to as you played. But then moving on, another positive I'd say is obviously the way the game looks. If you go back to older games, you can obviously tell we've had a massive overhaul. And even though I don't have the HD texture pack, I'm playing on PC here. It still looks vibrant, it still looks nice. I know there's some issues with regarding PC, and obviously if you're not being able to play on Ultra or these types of settings, then the game probably doesn't look too great, so I can't speak to those types of graphics really. But I guess overall for console and this port, it's satisfactory, I'd say. Of course, music. Music's another big bonus. It's always good. It's a shame we don't have the classic theme. They've kind of steered away from that in the past couple of games, and I'm not sure how I really feel about that because it's so iconic. But I guess they want to try fresh stuff, which is you can't really go at them for that. Trying to think other positives. Monsters, of course. Main one. I think all the monsters in this game are pretty solid additions. All the new ones. I think like Duna is pretty good. Arkveld. Arkveld's one of those ones where you either like it or not. It just feels like a hybrid of ore, and whether you can say it's truly unique is up for debate. But I personally liked it. I find it kind of weird that they included it in the playtest, because you'd think a flagship monster you'd sort of save for the main game, but I guess they wanted to test if, the mechanics of everything, it was balanced. So yeah, those are the main things that I found, positive with the game. And then that's sort of what we've come to expect from the series, really. I still want to give them their flowers for, executing on adding new combat mechanics. Like, even with, like, Longsword, we have new moves, and everything just flows perfectly. So it does feel good to play. But then, when we're talking about content, this is a full retail price game, and, you can finish the game in, as little as less than 20 hours, really. I think the first day I played, I maybe logged 9 hours and I finished the story. Which obviously there's more content afterwards, but this is where we sort of get into the debate of what they've included. So, for content, like, spoiler warning, I'll put it in brackets, but I've played just over 50 hours. I'm already over a HR 100. What are we now? HR 119. We've done most of the challenges, ecology-wise, we've caught, every insect, bird, etc. that you need. Done all the side quests. The only thing I'm really missing achievement-wise is the crowns, but that's, you know, RNG farming. I'm not really in the mood to do that. That's something I hope will just, you know, come naturally as I play, as they release more content. But, yeah, the content I feel was lacking. Like, if we're comparing this game to, say, Rise had, I feel, a lot more content at the start compared to this, and with how long we've waited for this game and sort of the hype around the launch, I was expecting more, to be quite honest. So, if we remember back to World, where you'd have sort of integers of when you hit certain HR caps, you would have to take on a special assignment in order to get past that cap. And in this game, there is none of that. You get to HR 50, I believe, and that's it. After that, there is no new introduction of enemies. There's no, you know, gold, silver, Rathalos, and Rathian. There's no sort of what would you call them? Like variants. There's no variants. And we're pretty much used to getting variants late game. And it's whether this is content that will be released later on to, you know, give the game more sort of false longevity, I guess. But it feels like the game's a lot more streamlined since they've introduced the story. And that's sort of the next issue I take with the game is this game's, well, the series is never focused on story, as we know. It's always been silent protagonist, you go, you kill monsters, you get the next assignment, so on and so forth. And this time we have this story, and Co Carnage is someone that touched on this. There is no character development. So, like, Nata and the handler, you know, all the crew in the guild, they're just sort of there to make the story transition. They're not there for you to actually have any interesting engagements with. There's no lore behind them, apart from Nata, who seems to be the main focus rather than you. So it's kind of this weird, like, hybrid they've taken, where it's an RPG game, and you can select your weapons and customize your character, but then you can't actually make any decisions that impact the story they've given. Which I find kind of odd. Like, I'm glad that they're experimenting with sort of stuff like that, because there are people that, you know, see this as a single player game and don't necessarily do multiplayer hunts. But it is one of those things that I just found slightly weird, so maybe we'll revert back to non-story in the next installment. It's hard to say, really. But yeah, that wasn't a shining moment for me personally. But outside of that, that was sort of the main thing that sort of caught me. And then when we had HR changes and no caps, that was the sort of the other main one. So, you know, I put in all these hours, I'm enjoying the game, I'm expecting there to be some sort of crazy assignment or twist when you get to HR 100, like you've earned your stripes, you're now able to take on something new, and there's nothing. You know, that you've reached this sort of level where, you know, you get an achievement for it. That's one of the main points of getting there, and there's actually no in-game reward for it, which is just quite deflating. You know, especially when you're paying, you know, full price for this game and you're exploring all the content and you don't get anything for achieving, you know, the end goal. Which is quite odd. So, if you remember back to Rise, for me, Rise felt like a spin-off. You know, we had this sort of Spider-Man-like movement, and it was very, very quick-paced. Even for a Monster Hunter game, it was very quick-paced. Now we're moving to this, where this is effectively World 2. And with most, you know, development teams, you'd assume their goal is to expand on their previous, you know, release and do better than their previous release. And what I'm asking myself is this game better than World? And I'm just finding myself saying no. This game is not better than World. It's entertaining. It's good. but there's less content in the world. And granted, we haven't had any expansions yet. This game is new. But there was definitely a lot more content in base world than there is in base wilds. And when we're paying these sort of prices, I was expecting at least, you know, the introduction of variants other than the guardian aspect, because that's the story aspect. And then the tempered monsters, like tempered monsters have always been a thing. It kind of feels like a lazy cop out for content because it's not actually new monsters. There's not really new move sets. It's just a purple hue, and you know you get some extra rewards, and it just felt slightly lacking. As someone you know who's been playing the series for a long time, you know in World we had the giant siege monsters. We don't have that in this, and you know I guess that's fair in the aspect that they've gone through this story thing where you're not going to encounter siege monsters because you're here to, you know, solve the story or the mystery of what this guardian thing is. Um, so it's kind of odd that we're missing such big fights from the game, and obviously it was kind of overshadowed by the fact that we got the flagship fights in the playtest, which was just something that was quite weird to me personally. But obviously, if they're bug fixing stuff like that, then I understand it. But it also kind of feels like a slightly rushed launch, which I'm hoping they'll fix with future content. But are they stagnating what could have been a full release? You know, including things like the Mitsune, that they said is going to be like, you know, the first event expansion and stuff like that. And then obviously moving on, we can see here this other aspect is it's called an open world game. You know, it's how it's been marketed, but it's much more like an open locale game. Because you can see here with the slight frame reduction that it's just loading the other area in. It's not truly open world. And I respect the fact that, you know, they're trying to build on world and have this more immersive experience. But at what point do we just go back to, you know, the classic guild hall, hanging around with hunters, guild questing, taking the quest from the board, going out together, um, and just building bigger locales that way rather than trying to squish it into this one map. So yeah, that's another thing that's sort of on my mind in terms of where the series is heading. And I think the last point, because I know I've been rambling for quite a while now, the last point is sort of difficulty. And I like where we've gone with, you know, I'm not going to call it hand holding because this game has always been something that you have to sort of delve into and learn over time. And it was actually quite difficult if you remember playing earlier installments, especially when you're younger. It was a lot to sort of take in. So I appreciate how they've sort of done this with making it easier for newcomers to experience. But it gets to a point now where we've got these like weird gacha aspects where you know you get your login bonus, you get tickets, and even if we open the menu here, like it's not an example on this locale, so we'll open the world map. But there, so Kongalala, if you take on this, you're guaranteed a gem. Like, they've taken a lot of the farming aspect out of this, which I can understand from one aspect, because, you know, a lot of people have less time to put into these games. You know, you've got full-time workers, and they don't have the time to experience all the content in, you know, in a fair manner compared to people that have a lot of spare time to experience the game. So we're at this sort of crossroads where you've made it a lot easier for newcomers, but you've also made it far too easy for sort of veterans of the franchise now, where I didn't have to change armor sets more than twice throughout the whole game. I started with the default set, switched to an ore set, finished the game, and then simply by doing the Arc Veiled mission and the way that drops work in this game, that are just, you know, the RNG aspect's been removed quite heavily to the fact you are given plenty of drops. You know, when you hit and break certain monster parts, you get a drop. When you take off certain body parts, you obviously get another drop. So it's a lot easier to get resources, and it's one of those things where when you're taking away that farming aspect, you're taking away a lot of replayability. And so that sort of comes back to bite them in the fact that this game can be finished extremely quickly, and you know, it feels lacking for content in a game that's usually you would spend hundreds of hours on. Um, so I think that sort of rounds up my review. Is the game good? Yes, it's a good game. If you enjoyed World, you'll like this. Is it better than World? No. And I think we're going to have to wait and see what they plan to do with content expansion. But again, how much are they going to charge for this expansion? At what point does it become a double retail cost game for what should effectively be base game content? We'll have to wait and see. It's one of those strange things in games at the moment, which I wasn't really expecting Capcom to do with Monster Hunter, to be quite honest. I'll show off my equipment and stuff. So this is effectively 50 hours worth of gameplay. You know, full rarity 8 gear. I haven't even been farming jewels. This is just stuff I've got from playing. So you can see our skills. We got blast attack, crit, stam thief, weakness exploit, convert element, heartbreaker, earplugs, adaptability. We got all these skills, and you know, this stuff on older games would have taken hours and hours to get, and it just feels very, very easy, where you're not really rewarding the players that put in time to get these high gear thresholds. There's no monster to deal with, and that's just slightly disappointing. You know, it leaves a sour taste when you're expecting what you're used to from this franchise. I still have high hopes. You know, I'll be a Monster Hunter fan for life, but yeah, slightly lackluster. I would say if you're looking to pick this game up, honestly, I would just say wait until more content comes out, or you know, wait for a sale, honestly, because 50, 60 quid, you know, $80 for effectively 20, 30 hours of content doesn't seem like great value. And, you know, that's even if you can run it at, you know, a good quality preset and enjoy what the actual environment has to offer. So yeah, that's sort of my long-winded review of Wilds, and it's just something I wanted to touch on as someone that's played the game, you know, since the original. And I don't know if obviously Capcom are going to be looking at reviewers' feedback, stuff like that. It seems to be quite an echo chamber they're in at the moment, where they just sort of are told, yeah, it's great, and ship it. But part of me feels like this was a test for their next expansion of the franchise. This felt like a sort of bootstrapping release, and when they can push the tech further, I think they're going to execute on that. But as a consumer, I felt like they should have delivered a fair bit more. So yeah, let's go check out my hunter profile, and we'll end on that. 59 hours, HR 119, you know, almost everything in the game done. And overall, a fun experience, but I felt like it was lacking. So yeah, that's my review of Monster Hunter Wilds. And if you have any feedback on your experiences on the game and what you think they should have added, I'd love to talk to other hunters about it. But yeah, I have rambled a long time. This has been a while since I've made a video, and this is something I just wanted to cover. And quick tad bit to add, this was released after their anniversary, which they did releases with MSI, and even for that, the products they released were all undersold MSI products, just reskinned with Monster Hunter decals. So again, it is painting quite a bad picture for how they're executing recent stuff for this franchise, and it's feeling more like an idle AFK battler rather than, you know, the engaging, tough game that we were used to. So yeah, that's my sort of full review, and I hope you enjoyed.